The afternoon sun shimmered across the city like melted gold, reflecting off glass towers and polished cars as people hurried through the busy shopping district. The air was thick with laughter, the click of heels, and the soft hum of luxury. Outside Maison d'Or, one of the city's most exclusive fashion boutiques, a brand new Rolls-Royce Phantom purred to a stop. The chauffeur opened the door, and a tall, composed man in an immaculate suit stepped out. Ethan Cole, one of the richest men in the country, he had come to the boutique on business, a quick stop to finalize a collaboration for his luxury brand. But fate had something very different planned for him that day as Ethan adjusted his cufflinks and looked toward the boutique entrance. A faint sound caught his attention. It was soft at first, almost lost in the noise of the city, but it carried a kind of sadness that made his chest tighten. He paused, scanning the sidewalk. That's when he saw her. A young black girl sat on the cold concrete near the store's entrance, her body trembling as she tried to hide her face behind her hands. Her thin jacket looked out of place amid the sea of designer coats and glittering jewelry that passed her by. The tears falling from her chin left dark spots on her faded jeans. She wasn't begging for money. She wasn't asking for help. She was just broken. "I can't afford the dress," she whispered, her voice cracking like fragile glass. Those 5 words hit Ethan harder than he expected. There was something in her tone, a kind of defeat that no one her age should know. People were passing right by her, their eyes sliding away as if she didn't exist. Some even frowned, annoyed by the sight of someone crying in such a prestigious place. Ethan couldn't look away that he watched as the girl tried to collect herself, wiping her face with the back of her sleeve. Her hands were shaking. Her eyes, red, swollen, and filled with quiet pain, looked toward the boutique door as if she still couldn't believe what had just happened inside. A mother and daughter walked out of the boutique just then, laughing and carrying shiny gold shopping bags. The girl flinched, her face turning away in embarrassment. It was clear she didn't want pity. She just wanted a moment that had been stolen from her. Ethan's curiosity deepened. He was a man who had seen the world, people begging for deals, for attention, for success. But this was different. This wasn't greed or desperation. This was heartbreak, a silent kind that money couldn't usually fix. He found himself stepping closer before he could even think about it. His instincts told him to move on, but something deeper, something human, kept his feet rooted as he stood there. A memory flickered in his mind. His younger sister, Lily, crying outside a thrift store years ago because she couldn't afford a prom dress. Back then, Ethan was just a teenager, helpless to do anything about it. That night, she didn't go to prom. A few years later, she passed away in a car accident. The guilt of not being able to make her happy still haunted him. Maybe that was why this scene felt so familiar. Maybe that was why he couldn't walk away. The girl didn't notice him at first. Her lips trembled as she whispered again to herself. "Why did I even come here? What was I thinking?" Her voice cracked at the end, and that was enough for Ethan to take a step forward. He spoke softly, not wanting to scare her. "Are you all right?" The girl flinched, looking up quickly. Her eyes widened when she saw the well-dressed stranger standing over her. For a second, she thought he was going to tell her to move away from the boutique, like others had before. I'm fine," she said quickly, trying to stand up and hide her embarrassment. But the way her voice quivered betrayed her words. Ethan didn't believe her for a second. There was a heaviness in her expression, the kind that came from long days of struggle and disappointment. As cars passed by, and the wind carried away her quiet sobs. Ethan made a decision he didn't fully understand yet. Something told him that this moment, this random encounter outside a fashion boutique, was not an accident, and before the day was over, this small act of kindness he was about to show would not only change her life, but his as well. Her name was Amara Johnson, and ever since she was a little girl, she had believed that dreams could take her anywhere. Born and raised in one of the city's roughest neighborhoods, she had grown up watching her mother juggle 2 cleaning jobs just to put food on the table. Her father had left when she was only 6, leaving behind nothing but a few photographs and a silence that hung heavy in their small apartment. But through all the hardship, Amara had learned one thing from her mother: never let your circumstances define your worth. That belief had carried her all the way to college. With straight A's and a heart full of determination, Amara had earned a full scholarship to one of the city's top universities. She worked nights at a small diner to cover her rent and textbooks, and though she was always tired, she never complained. Every cup of coffee she served, every plate she washed, she told herself it was one step closer to a better future. When she heard about the upcoming college gala, her heart fluttered with excitement. It was the event of the year, a night where the brightest students gathered with sponsors, professors, and business leaders. It was her chance to fit in, to finally feel like she belonged in that world of success and ambition. She imagined herself standing confidently in a beautiful dress, shaking hands with people who might one day change her life. For weeks, she saved every tip she could. She skipped lunch, walked instead of taking the bus, and cut every possible expense just to build up her little dress fund. It wasn't about showing off, it was about feeling seen. For once, she wanted to walk into a room and not feel like the poor scholarship girl. One Saturday morning, she finally had enough to start looking. Her heart raced as she stood outside Maison d'Or, the same boutique she'd seen featured in magazines and celebrity posts. The elegant glass windows displayed gowns so stunning they seemed to sparkle under the sunlight. She hesitated for a moment, clutching her purse tightly. She knew she didn't belong there, but hope pushed her forward. The scent of expensive perfume hit her the moment she stepped inside. The air conditioning hummed softly, and a dozen mannequins in glittering dresses seemed to watch her every move. The women browsing nearby were dressed in heels and designer handbags, while Amara wore faded jeans and a second-hand sweater. Still, she smiled politely as she approached the rack of dresses. Her eyes landed on the one. A simple, soft blue gown that shimmered like morning dew. It wasn't too revealing, not too flashy, just elegant. She ran her fingers across the fabric and imagined herself twirling in it under the gala lights. For the first time in a long while, she felt beautiful. "Excuse me," she said to the woman behind the counter. "How much is this one?" The woman looked up, her gaze sweeping over Amara from head to toe. Her smile was thin and insincere. "That's a Maison exclusive. It's one of our limited pieces, $1,200. Amara's breath caught. She tried to hide the shock in her face. 1,200? That was nearly 3 months of her diner pay. She quickly glanced at the tag, praying she'd misheard. But there it was, printed clearly. "I see," she whispered, forcing a smile. "Thank you." The woman's smirk deepened. "You might find something more affordable down the street. They have discount dresses there." Her words stung like a slap. Amara felt her cheeks burn with humiliation. She opened her mouth to respond, but the words wouldn't come. The other shoppers were staring now, whispering behind their hands. She felt small, like she'd stepped into a world that didn't want her. She put the dress back carefully, her hands trembling. "Thank you anyway," she managed to say, her voice barely above a whisper. Then she turned and walked out quickly before the tears could fall. The moment she stepped outside, the weight of everything hit her all at once. The rejection, the exhaustion, the feeling of never being enough. She sat down on the curb, buried her face in her hands, and let the tears fall freely. "I can't afford the dress," she whispered, as if saying it out loud might somehow hurt less, but it didn't. It just made her realize how cruel the world could be to those who dared to dream beyond their means. And that's where fate found her, broken, humiliated, and sitting on the sidewalk, just seconds before a billionaire named Ethan Cole stopped to listen. Ethan Cole had seen many things in his life. Boardrooms filled with suits and ego, charity events dripping in fake smiles, and news headlines that painted him as either a ruthless genius or a savior of the economy. But in that moment, standing on a busy sidewalk outside Maison d'Or, he saw something far rarer. Genuine heartbreak. He watched the young woman sitting on the pavement, her shoulders trembling, her voice fragile as she whispered words that shouldn't carry so much pain. "I can't afford the dress." He had heard those words before, different mouth, same meaning. It took him back years, to a small apartment where his younger sister Lily had cried quietly in her room because she couldn't afford a prom dress. Back then, Ethan had nothing. He had promised her that one day, he would build an empire big enough that no one in his family would ever feel that kind of helplessness again. But life had been cruel. Lily didn't live long enough to see that day. Now, watching this girl, something inside him stirred. The memory of his sister's tear-streaked face flickered in his mind, and his throat tightened. Maybe this was why he couldn't walk away. Maybe, deep down, he was still trying to make peace with the past. He adjusted his suit jacket and took a careful step closer. The sound of his shoes against the pavement made the girl look up, startled. Her eyes were wide, rimmed red from crying. She looked so young, maybe 19 or 20. Her skin glowed a deep brown under the sunlight, and her expression was a mix of embarrassment and exhaustion. "Are you all right?" Ethan asked gently. His voice was calm, deep, and unexpectedly warm. Amara blinked in surprise. I'm fine," she stammered, trying to wipe her tears quickly. She looked away, ashamed to be seen like this, especially by a man who clearly didn't belong in her world. His watch alone could have paid her rent for 6 months. Ethan crouched down to her level, ignoring the odd glances from passing strangers. "You don't look fine," he said softly. "Did something happen?" She hesitated, torn between pride and pain. A part of her wanted to stay silent. She'd learned that pity never helped. But another part, the part that had been breaking for weeks, wanted to tell someone, anyone, what she'd been carrying alone. Finally, she whispered, "I just wanted to buy a dress. For my college gala. I've been saving for months, but it's too expensive." Her voice cracked, and she looked away again. "And the woman inside, she laughed at me, told me to go somewhere cheaper." Ethan's jaw tightened. He glanced toward the boutique door, his expression darkening. He'd seen arrogance before, but mocking someone for dreaming? That was unforgivable. "What's your name?" he asked quietly. "Amara," she said, her voice trembling. "Well, Amara," Ethan said, standing up slowly. "I think that woman inside owes you an apology, and maybe a little lesson in humility." Amara frowned, confused. "What do you mean?" He offered her his hand. "Come with me." She stared at him, startled. "Wait, what?" "No, I can't. You don't even know me." Ethan smiled faintly. "True, but I know what it's like to want something so bad it hurts." There was something in his tone, steady, kind, and strangely familiar, that made her hesitate. After a moment, she placed her hand in his. His grip was firm but gentle, as if silently promising her that she was safe. As they walked toward the boutique door together, the world seemed to slow. The same people who had ignored her before now turned to stare, their whispers filling the air. Amara's heart pounded. She wasn't sure what was happening, but for the first time in a long while, she felt seen, and Ethan, who had spent years surrounded by luxury, success, and empty conversations, felt something stir in him that he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. He didn't know who this girl was beyond her tears, but he knew one thing. She deserved better. Little did either of them realize that this small moment, born from a stranger's compassion, was about to change both their lives forever. The glass doors of Maison d'Or slid open with a quiet chime as Ethan and Amara stepped inside. The faint scent of expensive perfume and polished marble filled the air. Every corner of the boutique gleamed with luxury. Rows of shimmering dresses, gold-framed mirrors, and chandeliers that sparkled like captured starlight. It was the kind of place where only the elite belonged, and everyone else was simply out of place. Amara's heart thudded in her chest as she looked around nervously. Every step she took echoed a reminder that she didn't belong there. Her hand gripped the strap of her worn-out purse tightly, as if it could shield her from the judgmental stares beginning to follow her. Moments earlier, she had been humiliated here. Now, walking back and beside a man whose watch cost more than her entire savings, she felt both confused and afraid. "Mr. Cole," a sharp, practiced voice rang out. The same saleswoman who had mocked Amara earlier was suddenly all smiles. She nearly tripped over herself rushing to greet him. "What an honor to have you here again. We weren't expecting." Ethan raised a hand, stopping her mid-sentence. His calm, composed face had hardened into quiet authority. "This young lady was here a few minutes ago," he said, his voice firm. "She came to look at a dress, and I understand she wasn't treated very kindly." The woman froze. Her fake smile faltered as her eyes darted toward Amara. For the first time, she seemed to truly see the girl, not as a nuisance, but as someone standing beside power. I didn't mean any disrespect, sir," she stammered. "It was a misunderstanding." Ethan's gaze was cold. "I don't think it was a misunderstanding," he said, stepping closer. "You judged her because of how she looked. Because you assumed she couldn't afford to be here." His words were steady, but they carried the weight of authority that made the entire store fall silent. Other customers paused mid-conversation, their curiosity piqued. The employees behind the counter exchanged uneasy glances. The woman tried to recover her poise, wringing her hands. I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Cole. I didn't realize she was with you." Amara felt a sting in her chest at those words. With him, as if that were the only reason she deserved respect. Ethan noticed the flicker of pain cross her face. His expression softened for a moment. Then he turned back to the saleswoman. "You should treat everyone who walks through those doors with dignity, whether they're billionaires or students saving for a dream." "Yes, sir," the woman murmured, her head bowed. "Good," Ethan said sharply. "Now, the dress she wanted, the blue gown on display. Wrap it up. I'll take it." Amara's eyes widened. "Wait. No, you don't have to do that," she whispered urgently, tugging at his sleeve. "Please, you've already done enough." Ethan looked down at her, his tone softening again. "It's not charity," he said quietly. "It's a reminder that dreams aren't supposed to be crushed just because they're expensive." The saleswoman returned with the dress, carefully folded inside a glossy black bag with the boutique's gold logo printed on it. "Here you go, Mr. Cole," she said nervously. Ethan handed her his black card without even glancing at the price tag. As she swiped it through the register, the machine beeped softly. Sealing the moment, he turned back to Amara, offering her the bag. She hesitated before taking it, her hands trembling. Tears welled in her eyes, blurring the shimmering gold logo. "Why?" she whispered, her voice breaking. "Why are you doing this for me?" Ethan paused, his expression unreadable for a moment. Then he said softly, "Because once, someone believed in me when I had nothing. It's only fair I return the favor." The woman behind the counter pretended to busy herself with paperwork, unable to meet their eyes. Around them, customers whispered in awe. Some even smiled, touched by the unexpected moment of kindness unfolding in the middle of a luxury store. As Ethan guided Amara toward the exit, the sunlight outside seemed brighter, warmer somehow. The cold air of humiliation she had felt earlier had been replaced by something new. Hope. Clutching the dress bag to her chest, Amara looked up at him. "Thank you," she said softly. Ethan gave her a small, knowing smile. "Just promise me one thing," he said. "When life gives you a chance to help someone else, don't think twice." Amara nodded, her heart full. She didn't know it yet, but this wasn't just the day she got her dream dress. It was the day her life began to change in ways she could never have imagined. And for Ethan Cole, the man who had everything, it was the day he rediscovered what truly mattered. When Amara got home that evening, the boutique's glossy black bag felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. She placed it carefully on her bed, her heart racing with disbelief. The events of the day still felt like a dream, or maybe a miracle. Only hours earlier, she'd been sitting on a sidewalk, her cheeks stained with tears. Now, in that bag was the dress she thought she'd never own. The dress that had broken her heart and healed it in the same day. For several minutes, she just stared at the bag. Her fingers trembled as she slowly pulled out the soft blue gown. The fabric shimmered in the evening light that streamed through her window. It felt impossibly smooth beneath her fingertips, delicate, yet strong, like the new hope growing in her chest. Her mother, who had just returned from her cleaning shift, paused in the doorway, wiping her hands on her apron. "Amara, where did you get that?" Amara turned, her eyes glistening. "You won't believe me if I tell you. Try me." So Amara told her everything. About the boutique, the humiliation, and then the stranger who had stepped in like an angel out of nowhere. Her mother listened quietly, her hand covering her mouth in astonishment. "Child, do you know who that man was?" she whispered finally. "Ethan Cole. The Ethan Cole. He owns half the buildings in this city." Amara nodded, still unable to make sense of it all. "He said, he just wanted me to believe in myself again." Her mother's eyes softened. Then maybe God sent him for a reason. That night, Amara stood in front of the small mirror in her bedroom and carefully slipped into the gown. It fit perfectly, as if it had been made for her. The soft fabric hugged her curves, the color complementing her skin like a dream. She turned slowly, her reflection glowing in the dim yellow light. For the first time in her life, she didn't see the tired diner waitress or the girl who had been laughed at for dreaming too big. She saw someone new, Someone strong, worthy, beautiful. Tears welled in her eyes. But this time they were tears of joy. She whispered to herself, "You're going to make it, Amara. You're going to make it." The next morning, she carefully hung the gown beside her small wardrobe. Every time she looked at it, she felt that spark of hope reignite. It wasn't just a piece of fabric. It was proof that kindness still existed, that her dreams weren't foolish after all. Meanwhile, in his penthouse overlooking the city skyline, Ethan Cole sat alone, a glass of water in hand. The city lights glittered below, but his thoughts were elsewhere. On the girl with the trembling hands and brave eyes. He couldn't quite explain why he had done it. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was fate. Or maybe it was just something his heart needed. To remind himself that not everything in life was about profit, contracts, or reputation. That he remembered the way she had looked at the dress, like it was more than clothing, like it was a doorway to a better version of herself. That look reminded him of Lily, his late sister, who used to dream of becoming a designer but never got the chance. Helping Amara had stirred emotions he hadn't felt in years, emotions he thought he had buried beneath success. Back in her tiny apartment, Amara folded her uniform for the next day's shift, but she couldn't stop smiling. The world felt different now, warmer, brighter, like the universe had finally noticed her. Before going to bed, she wrote something in her journal, a habit she kept to remind herself of life's little lessons. Today, a stranger believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Maybe the world isn't as cruel as I thought. Maybe miracles wear suits sometimes. She closed her journal, turned off the light, and lay in bed, her heart lighter than it had been in years. That blue gown, hanging quietly in the corner of her room, had become more than a dress. It was a symbol of dignity restored, of dreams reignited, and of a kindness that had changed the course of her life forever. And as she drifted off to sleep, one thought echoed softly in her mind. If a stranger could see something in me, maybe I can too. The night of the college gala arrived like a dream Amara still couldn't believe was real. The city sparkled under a velvet sky as limousines and luxury cars rolled up to the grand ballroom of the Regency Hotel. The glass chandeliers inside cast golden light over polished marble floors, and the soft hum of violins filled the air. It was the kind of evening Amara had only ever watched in movies. But tonight, she wasn't a spectator. She was part of it. Standing in front of the mirror in her dorm room earlier, Amara had stared at her reflection, hardly recognizing the young woman who looked back. The soft blue gown draped around her like flowing water, highlighting her deep brown skin and the quiet confidence in her eyes. She had styled her natural curls into a soft bun, leaving a few strands to frame her face, and applied just a touch of lip gloss. For the first time, she didn't feel like she was pretending to belong. She belonged. When she arrived at the ballroom, heads turned. Conversations paused. Even her classmates, the ones who used to whisper about her cheap clothes and diner job, fell silent. She could hear their murmurs as she passed. Is that Amara? She looks stunning. Where did she get that dress? Amara smiled softly but kept walking, her heart pounding beneath the elegant fabric. Every step she took across that polished floor felt like a victory, a quiet, graceful defiance of every person who had ever made her feel small. Her best friend, Naomi, rushed over with wide eyes. Girl, you look like a princess. What happened to the thrift store plan? Amara laughed. Let's just say, the universe surprised me. Naomi grinned. Whoever gave you that surprise, thank them twice. You're glowing. Amara blushed, but her heart ached just a little. She wished she could thank Ethan Cole properly, tell him what his act of kindness had meant. But she hadn't seen or heard from him since that day. For all she knew, he'd moved on and forgotten her entirely. Little did she know, across the ballroom, hidden among the crowd of donors and alumni, Ethan was there. Dressed in a simple black suit, he stood near the back of the room, blending into the shadows. He hadn't planned to attend, but when he heard that his company had sponsored the event, curiosity got the better of him. He wanted to see how she was doing, even if from afar. When Amara walked in, Ethan's breath caught for a moment. She carried herself with such grace, such quiet strength, that he could barely recognize the tearful girl from the sidewalk. There was a sparkle in her eyes, the same kind he used to see in Lily's. As the evening went on, laughter filled the room. Students mingled with business leaders, professors gave speeches, and the orchestra played gentle music. When Amara's name was called to receive the Academic Excellence Award, she froze for a moment, stunned. Naomi nudged her. Go? That's you. Heart pounding, Amara climbed the stage, her heels clicking softly. The crowd erupted in applause. As she took the small gold trophy in her trembling hands, she glanced toward the back of the room, and there he was, Ethan Cole, watching her with a proud smile that said more than words ever could. Their eyes met for a brief second, and Amara's heart swelled. She wanted to run to him, to thank him, to tell him that his kindness had changed everything. But before she could, he gave her a small nod and turned to leave quietly. No one noticed him slip out the side door, but Amara did. She clutched her award to her chest and smiled through tears. The man who had once stopped to comfort a crying stranger had now given her something far greater than a dress. A second chance at believing in herself. The music swelled and applause filled the room. Amara whispered under her breath, "Thank you, Mr. Cole, for seeing me when no one else did." It truly was a night she would never forget. The night she finally realized that she didn't need wealth or approval to shine. She had always been enough. She just needed someone to remind her of it. As Ethan Cole walked out of the grand ballroom into the quiet night, the cool breeze hit his face, a welcome contrast to the emotional warmth that had filled his chest moments ago. He loosened his tie and stood under the glowing streetlights, watching his breath cloud in the air. For years, Ethan had attended countless charity events, galas, and fundraisers, but none had ever touched him like this one. Tonight wasn't about business deals or publicity. It was about her, the girl he'd met outside that boutique, crying softly because she couldn't afford a dress. Her words still echoed in his mind. I can't afford it. They weren't just about a gown. They were about a world that often tells people like her, young, struggling, unseen, that they aren't enough. And as he watched her tonight, radiant and proud, he realized that helping her had healed a part of him he didn't even know was still broken. Ethan had grown up far from the world of billionaires and luxury. He wasn't born into money. He'd earned every cent. His mother, a single parent, had worked double shifts as a seamstress in a small clothing factory. She had calloused hands and tired eyes, but she always told him, kindness is a currency that never loses value. When Ethan was 12, he remembered watching her patch up a second-hand dress for his little sister, Lily. Lily had wanted to attend her school's dance, but didn't have anything nice to wear. Their mother stayed up all night sewing, humming softly as the old sewing machine clicked and whirred. The next morning, Lily twirled around the kitchen in her new blue dress, beaming with joy. Ethan could still remember that look on her face, the same look he'd seen on Amara when she stepped onto that ballroom floor. But that memory was bittersweet. A few months after that dance, Lily fell ill. The doctors diagnosed her with leukemia, and despite their mother's tireless efforts, they couldn't afford the expensive treatments. Ethan had watched helplessly as his little sister, the light of their small world, faded away. She was only 15 when she passed. That loss had carved a permanent scar in his heart. It became the reason he pushed himself so hard. The reason he built his company, Cole Enterprises, from nothing. He swore that no one in his reach would ever have to choose between dignity and dreams again. When he saw Amara that day outside the boutique, the trembling voice, the tears she tried to hide, the same shade of hopelessness that once filled his mother's eyes. He couldn't just walk away. He had to help her, not out of pity, but out of understanding. Lily would have wanted this, he'd whispered to himself as he handed the store clerk his credit card that day. Now, standing under the moonlight, he smiled faintly. The way Amara carried herself tonight, graceful, kind, determined, reminded him that his sister's spirit still lived on, in small acts of courage and kindness. Just then, his phone buzzed. It was a message from his assistant. Amara Daniels, scholarship application approved. Funds will be released tomorrow. Ethan exhaled deeply. He had arranged a full scholarship for her, anonymously, of course. He didn't want her to feel indebted or obligated. He just wanted her to have the chance she deserved. He slipped his phone back into his pocket. He looked up at the ballroom windows, where music still played faintly. He could almost see Amara laughing with her friends, holding her award close. Keep shining, kid, he murmured. The world needs people like you." With that, he turned and walked toward his car. For the first time in years, his heart felt lighter. He didn't just see a reflection of his past tonight. He saw hope for the future, and though he didn't know it yet, their paths were far from over. Fate had a way of bringing two souls together again, especially when one act of kindness had already changed both of their lives. A week after the gala, Amara was still floating on a cloud of disbelief. The memory of that night, the lights, the applause, the warmth in Ethan's eyes, played over and over in her mind like a beautiful dream she didn't want to wake from. She had placed her Academic Excellence Award on the small shelf above her study desk, where the morning sun could catch its golden shimmer. It was more than a trophy. It was a symbol of how far she had come. But just when she thought things couldn't get better, something unexpected happened. One chilly afternoon, she received an email from her university's financial aid office. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened it, expecting another notice about overdue tuition fees. Instead, her eyes widened in shock. Subject: Full Scholarship Award Notification. Dear Ms. Daniels, we are pleased to inform you that your academic scholarship has been fully funded by a private donor for the remainder of your degree. This includes tuition, housing, and living expenses. Congratulations, University Financial Aid Office. For a moment, Amara just sat there, frozen. The words blurred as tears filled her eyes. A full scholarship? She read it again and again, unable to believe it was real. Her heart pounded in her chest as she whispered, "Who would do this for me?" She immediately ran to Naomi's dorm room, waving her phone in disbelief. "Naomi, you won't believe this." Naomi took one look at the email and gasped. "Girl, this can't be real. Who'd give a full scholarship like that?" Amara bit her lip, trying to think. It says a private donor, but no name. Naomi's expression softened. "You think it could be him?" Amara's heart skipped a beat. Ethan Cole, the billionaire who had shown her more kindness in one day than most people had in a lifetime. She remembered his smile, the quiet way he had watched her at the gala, and how he had disappeared before she could say thank you. It made sense. He was the only person who could have done something this huge and stayed anonymous. But still, she needed to know for sure. The next morning, she walked to the university's administrative office. The receptionist, a kind older woman named Mrs. Allen, recognized her immediately. "Ah, Ms. Daniels. Congratulations on your scholarship, dear. It's rare to see something so generous." Amara smiled shyly. "Thank you, ma'am. I was wondering if you could tell me who the donor is. I want to thank them personally." Mrs. Allen shook her head gently. "I'm afraid the donor wished to remain anonymous." But she paused, lowering her voice. "The paperwork came through a corporate channel. Cole Enterprises." Amara's breath caught. That was it, the confirmation she needed. Her chest tightened with emotion as she whispered, "Thank you." She walked out of the office in a daze. The name Cole Enterprises echoed in her mind like a melody. Ethan had not only bought her that beautiful dress, he had made sure her future was secure. Later that night, she sat by her dorm window, the city lights glittering below like scattered diamonds. She took out her journal, the one she wrote in every night, and scribbled softly. "Some people give you things. Others give you hope. Mr. Cole gave me both." Her eyes glistened as she closed the book. She couldn't let this go without showing her gratitude. She didn't want to just send a thank you note or email. She wanted to look him in the eye and tell him how deeply his kindness had changed her life. So, she made a decision. She opened her laptop and began typing. Within minutes, she found the official website for Cole Enterprises. Scrolling through the Contact Us page, she spotted a small email link for public inquiries. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she finally began typing. "Dear Mr. Cole, you may not remember me, but I'll never forget you." Her hands trembled as she poured her heart into the message, every emotion, every tear, every moment of gratitude. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. As the email disappeared from her screen, Amara whispered to herself, "Even if he never replies, at least he'll know." What she didn't realize was that Ethan would read that very message the next morning, and it would move him in ways he hadn't expected. The morning sun crept through the curtains, painting golden lines across Mary's small apartment. She blinked awake, momentarily unsure if last night had been a dream. The events of the blind date came rushing back like waves crashing over her heart. She sat up slowly, the weight of exhaustion clinging to her. Ethan's coat still lay folded neatly beside her, clean, elegant, and out of place in her tiny home. For a long time, she just stared at it, her fingers tracing the fine stitching along the sleeve. "Why did he help me?" she whispered to herself. "People like him don't care about people like me." Her voice trembled with both confusion and disbelief. She had seen the wealthy all her life, some generous, most indifferent. But Ethan Parker had done something no one else ever did. He'd seen her pain and treated it as if it mattered. She made herself a small cup of tea and sat by the window, watching the city stir awake. Life outside went on, as it always did. Buses honking, children laughing, the distant chatter of neighbors. But inside her, something was different. She felt broken, but also strangely seen. Meanwhile, miles away in a sprawling glass mansion, Ethan stood by his office window. He hadn't slept much. The image of Mary's tearful eyes haunted him. He could still hear the sound of laughter from that restaurant. Sharp, cruel, unforgettable, he turned away from the window and sat down at his desk. In front of him lay files worth millions, contracts, business proposals, board reports, but none of it held his attention. His mind was stuck on a single thought. How many people like Mary do I pass every day without noticing? He leaned back, rubbing his temples. For the first time in years, he felt ashamed. Not because of something he'd done, but because of what he hadn't done, because he had lived in a world built on walls and wealth, where people like Mary were invisible. His assistant, Laura, entered quietly. "Sir, your morning meeting. Cancel it." Ethan interrupted softly. She blinked. "Cancel? But, sir, it's with I said cancel it." His tone wasn't angry. It was distant, thoughtful. "There are more important things today." Laura nodded, confused but obedient. As she left, Ethan opened his drawer and pulled out a small notebook. He flipped to a blank page and wrote just 4 words. She didn't deserve that. He closed the notebook, stood up, and grabbed his car keys. Mary was at work by noon, quietly dusting the hallway when she saw Ethan walk in. Her heart skipped. She hadn't expected to see him today, not after everything. "Good morning, sir," she said softly, keeping her eyes down. Ethan paused, watching her for a moment before speaking. "Mary, can we talk?" Her hands froze mid-motion. "Of course, sir." He gestured toward the garden. "Let's step outside." The two walked into the quiet backyard, sunlight filtering through the trees, the sound of birds cutting through the stillness. Ethan spoke first. "I couldn't sleep last night." Mary glanced up, startled. "Because of me?" He nodded slowly. "Because of what I saw. I've seen a lot of ugly things in business, Mary, but that was different. It made me realize something about the world I live in." Mary frowned slightly. Unsure what to say, he continued, his voice heavy with guilt. "People like me, we live in glass towers. We forget what real struggle looks like. And people like you carry the weight of this world without anyone even noticing." Mary's eyes filled with tears. "Sir, I don't want your pity." Ethan shook his head. "This isn't pity. It's an apology. You deserve to be treated with respect, not humiliated in front of strangers. Not by anyone." She looked away, biting her lip. "It's just how life is for people like me." "No," Ethan said firmly. "It's how people like me allowed it to be." There was a long silence. Then, for the first time, Mary met his eyes fully, and in that look was something powerful. A shared understanding. Ethan took a deep breath. "Mary, I want to make things right. Not just for you, but for people like you. For all the things I ignored for too long." Her lips parted in surprise. "Why me, sir?" He smiled faintly. "Because you made me see the truth, the kind of truth money can't buy." The words hung in the air like sunlight breaking through clouds. For Mary, they felt like a healing touch, not because he was a billionaire, but because he was human enough to say them. And for Ethan, it was the start of something he didn't know he was missing: redemption. The small cafe near Brookdale University buzzed with the quiet hum of students, professors, and the occasional tourist. It was the perfect balance of casual and sophisticated, intimate enough for a meaningful conversation, yet public enough to feel safe. Amara had chosen the spot herself, thinking it would be neutral ground. She had no idea that Ethan Cole, the billionaire she had only ever seen in emails and at the gala from afar, would be waiting there, casually dressed in a tailored blazer and dark jeans. looking every bit approachable yet commanding. Her heart pounded as she walked in. She clutched her backpack tightly, her knuckles turning white. What would she say? How would she even begin to thank the man who had changed her life so profoundly? Ethan spotted her immediately. He stood and offered a warm smile that put her nerves slightly at ease. "Amara," he said simply, as if greeting an old friend. "Mr. Cole," she stammered, her voice trembling slightly. "Thank you for meeting me." He waved his hand, gesturing for her to sit. "Please, call me Ethan. You've earned the right to call me that after the emails. I've been looking forward to this." She sat down, the seat feeling both heavy and light at the same time. Heavy with anticipation, light with hope. Ethan ordered 2 coffees, and they settled into a comfortable silence as the aroma of fresh espresso filled the space. Finally, Amara gathered her courage. I, I don't even know where to start," she said. Her eyes glistened. "You gave me that dress, and then you funded my scholarship. You've done more for me than anyone ever has. I can't thank you enough." Ethan shook his head. "You don't need to thank me, Amara. I didn't do it for recognition. I did it because I saw someone who deserved a chance, someone who reminded me of why I started caring about helping others in the first place." Amara blinked, tears welling in her eyes. "You remind me of my mom," she whispered. "She's always told me that kindness matters, even when the world doesn't notice. You prove that." Ethan's gaze softened. "I've learned something important from you too," he admitted. "Sometimes we get so caught up in wealth, success, and business, we forget what truly matters, the impact we have on people's lives. You reminded me of that." Amara felt a warmth spread through her chest. For the first time, she didn't feel like a poor scholarship student. She felt like someone who mattered, someone who had been seen and appreciated. Ethan continued, his voice quiet but firm. "Amara, your hard work, your determination, your ability to rise above hardship, that's what's remarkable. The dress, the scholarship, those are just tools to help you keep shining. But the light comes from you." Her heart thumped in her chest. I don't know what to say. I just want you to know I'll never forget this. I'll work harder than ever to honor your faith in me." Ethan smiled, leaning back. "That's all I needed to hear. Keep dreaming, Amara. Keep believing in yourself, even when it's hard. And when you have the chance, pay it forward. Help someone else who needs it. That's how the world changes." For a moment, they sat in silence, the cafe fading around them. There was no wealth, no social status, no hierarchy. Just 2 people, connected by a simple act of kindness that had rippled into something much greater. Finally, Amara whispered, I think this is the start of something amazing, not just for me, but for everyone I can help along the way." Ethan nodded. "Exactly. And I'll be watching from the sidelines, proud of every step you take." She smiled through her tears, feeling an unshakable confidence for the first time in her life. And Ethan, for the first time in years, felt a sense of peace he hadn't thought possible. The kind that comes when you know you've made a real difference in someone's life as they stood to leave. Amara turned to him and said softly, "Thank you, Ethan. Not just for the dress or the scholarship, but for believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself." He placed a hand gently on her shoulder. "No, Amara. Thank you for reminding me that even small acts of kindness can change lives, including mine." And as they walked out into the golden afternoon light, it felt less like an ending and more like the beginning of a story neither of them would ever forget.